I'm Iman Rapetti and welcome to our 2023 Pepsi Media Box.
I'm David Glass. I'm the CEO of Electrum, and I'm happy to be here in the media box.
And we're happy to have you with us. Payment stacks, what are they?
So, a payment stack is your infrastructure that you use to deliver your payments to your customers. That might include your software, your infrastructure, your apps, and your operations teams.
All right, so put me in front of the laptop. I'm buying something. What happens in that payment stack once, when I've decided I want to transact?
Right. So, let me think about that for a second. It depends on the type of thing you're buying, Iman. I think.
Okay, let's say groceries.
Okay,
'Cause
groceries.
A lot of people, especially after COVID or during COVID, decided, okay, we're going to shop online for our groceries and have them delivered.
So what happens after you put your payment details into the browser, type them in, then a message flies all the way from your e-commerce merchant, goes through a network, and perhaps potentially goes through a processor to eventually your bank. Now your bank is the bank on your card. That bank will then approve that payment and send the message back to the merchant, which will then be able to release the goods to you.
Who's paying for that transaction? Is it me as the person who's making the order? Or is it the banking institution who's lucky enough to get that business? Is it the service provider? How do you monetize a stack?
Such an interesting question. In a sense, we all eventually pay for it, right? but in this case, typically the merchant pays for it. So the merchant will pay a couple of percent on the transaction to be able to accept that card. And that money that the merchant spends is split up between the bank, which provides a service to the merchant, and your bank, which provides you with the card. So that's kind of how the whole virtuous circle of card payments. But if you think about it, ultimately, the merchant has to mark up their prices to be able to afford that card transaction.
So what liability is the customer left with? Are these typical agreements? Are they legislated that way, or is it really discretionary in terms of how that particular payment stack ecosystem works?
Yeah, look, in South Africa, we have quite a strong regulatory framework that we use to govern how payments work in South Africa. And it starts at the Reserve Bank and then ultimately gets pushed down to the banks, who are able to set many of the rules of how payments take place. That's really the full answer to that one.
So, how else can we monetize a payment stack?
I'm so glad you asked that question, because today there are many ways to monetize payments beyond fees. So what we're seeing in the market is that banks, retailers, mobile network operators are offering payment services, but not necessarily charging fees, but earning commissions on the payments that they process through their platforms. Already, we're seeing many organizations make many billions of rands in commissions and other types of income streams. Then there's the data around payments. So in the data space, we have both data which is ultimately sold to advertisers in order to target the ads more effectively, obviously anonymously in a sort of a POPIA compliant manner.
Disclaimer.
No, but it's all legit. And then there's also the data that can be used sometimes for in-house advertising. So retail advertising. So ShopRite, for example, has their own advertising agency, which people don't know about. And that's an incredible way for advertisers to reach the right customers. And that's all based ultimately on the underlying payments and checkout transaction that happened at the ShopRite group of stores. Then further to that, you can also make money on sort of additional services, for example, cross-border transactions, where you can make a margin on the exchange rate, etc. So there's lots of ways to make money on payments outside of fees.
I mean, that's so interesting. Just this kind of symbiotic relationship in the payment space that has to happen, where everyone kind of gets their little piece in order to give the consumer or the customer what they want in the end. What happens, Dave, when a merchant decides to go it alone, to say, we can actually manage all of this by ourselves?
Yeah, I mean, I think we see that a bit where there are like very large dominant players, for example, in China, where there's really two dominant companies that control much of the payment landscape there. And then in that case, the government actually stepped in to encourage more competition. And in fact, in South Africa right now, we only have a few banks that are really kind of dominant in the payment space. And what we're seeing is that the Reserve Bank is stepping into increased competition through new legislation, which we expect to see the start of next year.
How do you think, because a lot of what we've been discussing at this conference is around innovation, it is around projecting to the future. I mean, what could the future of payments even look like? And when you think about it, the iterative nature of platforms, I mean, from the way that they started to the way that they are sort of multi-blocked, today they're not just dealing with a single thing, there's a multiplicity of offerings or people in that chain. Where's it going?
Sure. So I think right now we're still very much reliant on this kind of hub and spoke model of payments, where there's lots of merchants, lots of banks, and we all go to these central hubs and we process our payments. But obviously with technology like blockchain and distributed ledger, we're seeing some really fascinating technology which enables us to do a far more resilient payment network that doesn't rely on these central hubs, rather lots and lots of little hubs that all work together to route the payment, much like we use the internet today.
So there's a big elephant in the room because, well, typically their buildings are quite big, and these are the banks, right? They're banking institutions. How do they fit into this equation? It feels like people are just going around the banks, directly to whoever they want to contract or purchase from. They use these platforms, which are, I'm assuming, are not necessarily connected to the banks, or are they?
So look, largely by law, you pretty much have to work through a bank in South Africa. However, even though they're going to increase the number of entrants into the payment space, my money is still kind of on the big banks because they've got the money to start off with. So further to that, I think they are well positioned to actually change to whatever the market needs. And so I'm actually quite bullish on the future of the big banks. I think they're going to do really well. They're going to discover wonderful new revenue streams. We're seeing it already. Lots of the banks have changed their revenue models significantly around just the changes in user behavior. So I'm really bullish on the banks.
What do you say about risks? I mean, when you have multiple players, a big platform stacked in the way that you described for us in the beginning, what are the risks?
Look, the Deputy Governor, Mr. Naidu, today was talking about one of the most important aspects of evolving the payment system is consider risk and protecting the consumer. And what we can see in the legislation and in the approach from the participants is that's at the forefront of our minds. So I think, further to that, we have some fantastic technological innovations, and there's some great technology vendors in South Africa who are actually at the forefront of managing risk themselves. So I think we're going to tackle the problem. The big issue remains phishing, and that relies heavily on consumer education.
And maybe just a quick note on that. If that is one of the biggest risks, I know that we spoke about it in an earlier conversation. People are getting so sophisticated with how they are phishing. And we're talking about phishing, it's the PH variety. What would you, as a public service announcement, say to consumers about that and how to be careful?
I would say don't ever click on any button in any email ever. That's the first one. Secondly, I would really ask yourself, does this feel legitimate? Does this feel right? And if you're really not certain, speak to someone who you can trust, perhaps your banker or someone of that nature. Yeah.
Dave Glass, I know it's the end of a very long day, but thank you for bringing the energy to our studio. We appreciate you.
Emmanuel Petty, thank you so much for your time. It's been a delight. Have a nice day.
Thank you.
Cheers.